Lisa is a glass artist. She also won a rather prestigious prize. So over to Lisa.
Well, thank you so much for coming. This is great. I'd like to start with this image just because I think in some ways it really encapsulates a lot of aspects of my work: line, movement, form, and also natural forces, especially gravity. This piece has a kind of weightless quality to it, mainly because it's formed upside down, so you're looking at it turned over. It's a kind of defying gravity in some ways. So when I started the MA, which is a MA in Art and Science at Central St. Martin's, you have to have a question, something which focuses your research. And so I decided gravity would be a good thing. It's something that helps me form my work, and a lot of things I make, I noticed, are self-forming, meaning I make something, but it's when you display it or when I put it in the kiln that it forms some aspect I can't actually control. It's something that natural forces like tension or gravity are actually forming it completely, and I have to let go of that. And all the series of pieces really became different little stories about gravity that I encountered along the way. A connection to physics, but also a connection to neuroscience, how our bodies perceive gravity. I do have an obsession with stretchy things, and even with the glass, the stretchiness, the pull, and the tension that I can capture in glass while it's still moving really is interesting in that material, but it's even fascinating in other materials that you use. I've often used my work as a way to look a little bit like fabric in terms of its movement. Using something which affects this to make this stretch makes gravity a kind of obvious component of the piece itself. The aspect of gravity I was exploring here in this piece was more about how our bodies actually create metaphors around physical experiences. When you say you have a heavy heart, or even the idea of falling in love, are all based on physical experience of the natural world that you move in. This is actually a metaphor that memory can actually have weight. Memories don't have actual weight, but they feel like it. So as I was looking into gravitational lensing, I started to learn more about dark matter. So bits of light will be twisted around in an unusual shape, and they believe that it's actually dark matter is distorting the light that's coming from these galaxies. There's a big piece of dark matter between galaxy, dark matter, and then you here on the Earth. And it's absolutely invisible. It doesn't reflect any light. In fact, makes up 95% of our universe. So sculpting nothing was an interesting idea. And it's really the voids here that I was looking at, describing particular shapes, and also the fragmentary quality of what they're doing. Before I started the MA, I did a really nice trip to Iceland with a group of people, and I came back with just loads of pictures, and I thought I would use them somehow in my MA. And indeed, they came out in a series of pieces. You get the impression that nothing is ever still in these places. It's geologically incredibly active. It was a good opportunity to use these photos as a kind of background for different ideas that I came across in gravity and the concept of entropy, an ordered state to a chaotic state all the time. And certainly the surface of the Earth and gravities are doing that, going through that process very actively. This is the piece that I got the National Open Art Prize installation category. It was something new I just decided to try out. It was quite an exposed piece because it's just hanging from a peg. And it literally forms itself, so the weight of the rock, which is just the right amount, pulls this cut piece of paper, which I printed on both sides, so digitally on one side and then silk screened color on the back. It actually forms the piece. When you take that rock away, it's nothing really. I had been working with using cut paper, but mainly as a modeling material for when I was working out ideas with glass, because if you take a 2D piece of paper and cut it up, it will fall, not unlike glass in some ways at certain temperatures. Yeah, they're all from the same template, and each one, you can form it in so many different ways. It's this idea that we're made out of the same elements, but we make multifaceted things from these elements ourselves. This was one residency I got involved in during my MA. The neuroscientist that I met talked about her research, which is looking at the vertical and our preference for the vertical in art. I liked work that had different kinds of orientation. They didn't have to be set upright or necessarily have a base. I liked the idea that you could turn the thing over, and also, the concept of which way is up is something we construct as humans, but in fact, we're standing on a planet which is rotating around the sun, and in a solar system which is moving in this huge galaxy, so nothing is really up or down. So she asked me to make some pieces so that she could test them in her lab, and the only brief was that I had to make them so there was one position that was especially vertical, and the preference came out to be 75% of people would always put it in the most vertical position. Another absolutely brilliant thing that we were lucky to take part in at university is we were invited to go on a trip to CERN. Oh, but all these incredible things are happening there, and they're all quite cutting-edge projects, which are furthering our knowledge of the universe. And then when we came back, we putting an exhibition together. So this is one of the pieces. It's called Capture. And one of the things I learned about was the particles that are moving very, very straight are the ones that are the very high energy particles, which is the ones that they want to find. The curved area are lower energy particles that are actually being bent by these huge dipole magnets, which are guiding the particles into the detector. And so I love this idea of line, and I decided to cage it. And this is a kind of idea that we do try to capture nature to learn its secrets, and artists and scientists are both going through that process. Share the wire, it's really trying to capture the energy of the place. These are the power lines that actually feed all the electricity into the LHC. And these birds gather there in the evenings. I thought it was really cute. It's this one particular residency. It really does connect to a lot of work, which I did a little bit before, but also it reached into where I am now. I couldn't bring very much, so I brought a roll of black paper, this fishing net, and some plastics. I took all of the little children's chairs and managed to wrap them up. And to me, it looks a little bit like some sort of exploding stars. And then this paper piece, which I put together. And so we showed this all in the local church at the end of the residency. That's it for now. Thank you.